So we have come to the end of yet another week. Today is Saturday. I'm gonna go out with a friend, for lunch, and I don't know. It feels like I am walking in the right direction, in terms of figuring out where I go from here. And yeah, I just feel very confident in the choices I've been making lately. And I don't know if I'm justified in that confidence yet, but like it is something for me to keep in mind. So yeah, so what exactly was this week like? This week we had a lot of I did faint, and ended up going to the hospital, and then I was also pretty, weak throughout like some other days of the week. So like during like those times, I'm not really accounting for things the way that I would otherwise. But yeah, I am. Apart from like these moments of physical weakness, like my mind has been in a pretty good place. I've been kind of like going back to being somewhat productive and figuring out what I want to be productive about, because that is also another challenge, is figuring out like what do I want to do and where do I want to do it. And this week I enrolled in the classes I'm going to be taking this semester. My classes are going to start next week. So Monday don't have class, but Tuesday I already am gonna start this semester, and I'm excited. I don't know how I'm going to be doing in regard to this subjects that I picked up, but I do want to at least be, how do I put it, I want to be at least a little engaged. It's okay if I don't go all the way, particularly because this is the last semester I'm taking this classes from like this major, so it's okay if I if I don't go all the way, because also I'm changing to something really different. It's not like I'll be able to pick up on the stuff that like on the next thing I'm majoring in, I'm trying to major in. Like I'm not going to be able to use any of the subjects that I already had in major. Pretty much what happened when I moved from like the first major to the second major. So I'm going to be, I don't know, mostly starting fresh, which is both exciting and it can feel a little daunting, particularly like at my age, because I'll be 28 by the time I start the new major. And it is what it is. There's no age for you to start something. There's no age for you to like do something. So like nothing matters. Not that nothing matters, but like this doesn't matter, my age and where I am at, because as I said, there's no age for you to start college. And it's interesting because I felt this way when I first started college back when I was 21. I felt that I was like really old compared to like everybody else around me, because like everybody I went to school with, like they either got to college right away, or they studied for like a year and then they got the year after that. And then there was I 21 starting, and some people they were close to finishing their degrees. And now the discrepancy is even bigger, but I'm not discouraged. Yeah, I'm okay. I think that right now I'm doing better than I did when I first started college, in terms of me being kind of like anxious about the future, because I don't know, I think the older I get, the more like I think that things are going to be alright, because I have more examples, more experience in which things they turn out to be alright, even if like I didn't have even if I was even if like they through like during the middle in the middle of the of like the chaos, like they seemed that everything was going to go wrong. In the end, everything turned out to be okay. So I have reason to believe that everything will turn out okay. Of course, that something that happened is not guaranteed that it's going to happen, that the same thing is going to happen again. I know that, but I don't know. I think that as you get older, you end up developing a level of resilience that sometimes you don't have when you're younger, particularly because like you haven't had enough experiences for you to just be resilient, about. And right now, I am. Yeah, I have been through so much, and I survived. I survived every time. Like every time that I pivoted, or I ended up changing, the course of what I was doing. It turned out, because sometimes like things like if you continue to doing the same thing, keep doing the same thing, like it might not turn out to be okay, but you have to learn in the middle of it to kind of like, change the course of action, and changing the direction you're going to. And I've been able so far to do that every time. So like I have reason to be confident that there are going to challenges are going to come, challenges are going to pass, and I'm going to still be here, like steady. Even if I'm changing where I'm standing, I'm still going to be here, and that's all that we can hope for sometimes. And I mean, that's all that you need. Also, sometimes you don't need everything to be going exactly according to plan. I mean, that would be ideal, but that is not very realistic to life. So what you need is for you to be centered and to be for you to be centered and focused, and like paying attention. That's also important, because as I said, you have to change your course of action. So like you have to pay attention to how where things are going, the direction they're going, and also like what exactly is going wrong, because there's so many ways that something can go wrong, and they're all part of the journey. They're all part of growth. You want to grow, you need to face challenges. And it's not that you need to face challenges, but you're going to face challenges regardless. So like you might as well make the best out of the situation. And sometimes making the best out of something, it can involve like having to change. And sometimes it involves failure. Failure is also part of life. But you can survive failing. And I think this is one of those things that getting older has also taught me, because when you're 18 and you have to face failure, it feels like the world is coming down, it's crashing down, everything's falling apart. But then you keep going, and then you realize that there is still journey to go. But yeah, something is kind of like wrapping this up. There's something else that I wanted to talk about, and it's basically my relationship with the past. Because when I think about where I was at from like 18 to 21, I talk a lot about this window of time a lot, because those were my first years, pretty much like being an adult, just throwing myself out there and trying to make something of myself. And it didn't go exactly as I had planned at the time. And at the time I was embarrassed by how things were not working out, and I was also really stuck into some really bad tendencies, bad behaviors. No, not bad behaviors in the sense that I kept going back to situations that were not really good for me, that were making me discouraged, and like think that the world was a worse place than it is. I mean, the world is as bad as it is, but it's just that there's also like good things that are happening around. And also like the thing I was talking about, living a simple life, kind of like staying away from like some major processes. As I said, I'm not going to be on social media. I'm not going to be checking, the news compulsively. I'm not going to be, opening myself up for things to kind of like go wrong. Because things are going to go wrong regardless. So I don't want to, open up to even like more things going wrong. I want to stay in a certain. I wanted to attain a certain level of, stability. And for that, sometimes looking away might be necessary. Although I would say I have been having some examples lately of like me engaging with like the bad things, and not on purpose. It just kind of like happens when you're out and about. Things they come up and they just really pop up that you can't really control. And I've been doing pretty well. I'm still not in a point where I'm going to go willy-nilly and like embrace some stuff. But I'm at least have like a hint that I am healing and that I'm learning to do better. And that is pretty much where I wanted. That's what I needed to hear, basically, to see basically about me, that I am changing, that I'm growing, and that things that have been hard historically, they're not always going to be hard. And also kind of like learning that the world will go on without your interference or not, because I think one of the reasons why I was so on top of the news and just seeing everything that was happening all the time, both relevant things and things that are happening like in social media, the drama that's happening, all that is kind of like happening, that is popular. I was very invested in everything, maybe not invested, but I was very on top of it. I was aware of everything, and I think there's a part of us that is very arrogant and just really thinks that like I have to know this, otherwise something bad is going to happen, or at least, or like I need to do, because also I was not just absorbing this information. I was also using the platforms I had to get things across, to say things, to state things, and it's almost there's this feeling that like if you don't, like things are going to kind of like you know, that either like they're gonna pass you by, or that, you know, something is going, I don't know exactly what, but I really needed, you know, when I was younger, to know everything that was happening. And you know, it felt that, you know, it was almost like compulsive, like I couldn't let go. I remember, you know, a channel that I used to watch back in the day that was all about news, and there was like at least one video per day, and I made a point of watching it, and it was not great for me because, you know, a lot of times, you know, when you're reporting news, there's bad things happening, and then you see those bad things, and then, you know, your understanding of the world, it can kind of like become skewed, because ultimately, like, a lot of the news that really matter, they are bad, they're not, you know, good, and they leave you feeling kind of like helpless, and sometimes even hopeless. So eventually I was able to break free and no longer consume that content, and I think it's going on to this day. But it's just that the things, like, it things they kept going on with me, knowing them or not, you know. And I think that once I finally got to a point where that was, I kind of like realized that I was able to, you know, take a step back and, you know, see where to kind of like no longer be invested and involved in that, because that's the thing, I don't have to be involved in that, like I don't really have like an impact, because I think that there's some people, if you have a voice in the platform and all that, like I think you might have a responsibility, you know, to, you know, share information, and, you know, and yeah, just like do something, you know, like you had a responsibility. But like that wasn't me. I didn't even have like, I mean, I had a platform, but it was not a visible one. So like but I felt that I had to, you know, keep on, you know, keep up to be on top of things. And I understand, because almost in a certain way, like even if like my platform is like 1 or 2 people, if you're sharing information, things that are valuable, like there's, you know, 1 or 2 people more that will know things, you know. But that's the thing, I think I had to finally kind of accept the lack of impact that I had. It's not that I was delusional thinking that, you know, this is going to happen. I think that maybe there was this illusion that like one day I might get to a point where it was relevant, but like I knew that that wasn't the case. But I really felt compelled, and I think there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, I think that's very, you know, not memorable, but like it was very admirable of me. You know, like I'm not usually someone, I think that I'm out there, you know, being selfless and stuff. So you know, like I guess me thinking like a stand, it was something, you know, it was a positive thing about me that, you know, it happened. Of course, like now I have regressed, not regressed, like that's the wrong word. I have, you know, taken a step back, and I'm no longer kind of like invested in like doing things, but I am, yeah, like, but oh, I just realized I just noticed my phone is dirty. You know, I had this, you know, flip-flops that I painted with spray paint, you know, not all of it, but like, you know, the strips, because then basically I could paint it in that whatever color I wanted. So I could, you know, match it with everything and anything. And I did the same with my boots, some of my Doc Martens, and I've been doing that. But you know, in this particular flip-flops, it didn't really work, because I don't know why, but like the paint didn't dry. It was, you know, spray paint. So like you touched it and you got your hands dirty, and it was type of dirty that you couldn't really clean off. You know, it was just a mess. So I finally, you know, I threw them away. My dad was very much like, yeah, it's time to throw them away, because you can wear it, because it was just painted your whole feet, you know, with like that the spray paint. So it wasn't particularly practical. I did use them once, you know, like I painted them. I think it was the second 2 or 3 times. I think I painted them 3 times. I used them once. I don't regret it, you know. I don't think that's necessarily like a waste of, I mean, because it didn't work out, so you could argue that it's like a waste of paint, but like not really. Like I had to try it to see that it didn't really work, that it wasn't really going to work. But anyways, back to what I was saying. Oh yeah, talking about the past, I look at those years, 18 to 21, and when I was younger, they looked like, you know, this like a waste, you know, like nothing had happened. A lot of things had happened, but like nothing significant, nothing relevant, nothing that I ended up carrying out, you know, from, you know, my from that point in time to the rest of my life. I mean, I didn't write as much as I wanted, but I did do a lot of writing. So, you know, like that was relevant, that I was able to kind of like carry on from, you know, that point in time, the period of time of my life. But you know, most everything else that I did was just very self-destructive, you know, which is really not good for me. I went places and I consumed contents that were really toxic and very harmful, you know, to me. And I did it because at the time I felt like I had to withstand that content to prove that I was strong. And basically I did that, and I grew sicker and sicker by the day, because you know, like I was physically, you know, things were kind of okay, but like mentally things were bad and getting worse. and you know, basically I already had a really negative, really pessimistic view of the world, and like every new thing I watched just made it worse. Although it also made me determined to prove that you know, some things were wrong, prove that you know, some things were not the way that was being said. But I wanted to prove with my own actions, and I was not really in a place where I could you know, do that. It didn't really work out in the end for me. Yeah, because you know, like I was there was, you know, trauma that was, you know, driving me. It was kind of my trauma was guiding me basically, and I couldn't, you know, I tried, but I couldn't break free from it. You know, like it took me many years later. It took many years, and it was like many years later that I finally started, you know, addressing the trauma. But you know, it was guiding me, and basically those things, they were kind of like being triggers, and they were just getting me increasingly more sicker, and that was kind of that. So I was talking about basically looking back, and at least like right now, I look at the period of time, and I don't see waste. I see, you know, like me being sick, which is, you know, is a reality. I was not doing very well mentally during like that period of time, and it was before I had, you know, a proper diagnosis. So you know, like the things that we're doing were very ineffective and ineffectual. They were ineffective, and they were not really helping, because I did get a diagnosis. I got my ADHD diagnosis in 2017, in the very beginning of the year. So I started taking, you know, medication, amphetamines, which were really bad, and they were triggering, you know, my manic episodes, and then after the manic episodes came the depressive episodes, and I was stuck in this vicious cycle where the things I was consuming, they were kind of like making my head worse. And also, like, I was very much stuck there because I couldn't look away. You know, I had, you know, I right now at this point in time, I know, and I am able to look away when things are not really working, which is something that like we should all learn. I think that some people, they have the same idea that I had back then, that you have to look in order to be strong. But I think that it requires the strength for you to just look away from something that's not good for you. I know that a lot of people wouldn't really want to hear it like this because they would think that it makes them weak. I think 18-year-old me, 19-year-old me would probably look at the way I am carrying myself, you know, the whole looking away thing, and you know, think that I'm being weak. But I don't care. I think that's ultimately the thing, because I feel like, you know, for the longest time I couldn't really change because I was very much stuck in this way, in my ways, and my ways involved me just having very unhealthy habits and tendencies. And you know, it involves like me having a certain version of myself, a notion of who I was, and I couldn't break free from that, you know. And the process of breaking free, I ended up like looking back and being kind of stuck there, because you know, I was basically becoming what I despised, or I really, maybe despise is a strong word, but I really didn't want to be what I consider to be weak. And as I said, like right now, I don't give a fuck, you know, like about what I used to think, about what I would be. I mean, of course I do, is a part of me, but I don't care about if like the version of myself that I have today isn't a healthy, is what, you know, it is a healthy version of me would think that was like less than, because I'm happy. I'm finally actually happy, because for so many years, 18 to 21, like I wasn't happy. You know, I had like little things that they were kind of like a relief to me, that they kind of, you know, had some, there was some respite there that, you know, allowed me to have some relief. But you know, I wasn't a happy person. You know, I was very unhappy, and I was basically sad on continuing to be unhappy until I achieved the goals that I had. You know, I was basically, I'm not going to change. You know, that was my mentality. I'm not going to change until I have this. You know, when I have this, I will be happy. I will be fulfilled, because that is going to be the thing that is going to fulfill me, going to satisfy me. That thing never happened, and it's very unlikely that would happen. Honestly, I mean, when I was like 11 to 21, I was very delusional, and I genuinely believed that it was going to happen. But you know, it was just so unrealistic, and I would have to have started from like a different point. Because I know some people, they don't like, you know, to hear it, but it's the truth. Like, you can only get as far as where you start, you know, like to where you start in life. So for me to get to the point I wanted, I would have needed to start somewhere else, and I would have needed different resources, different opportunities that I didn't have. So things they were never turned out like that. And usually because right now I don't really miss it. I don't really because for many years after I moved away, because it was kind of like a shocking thing. It was like very sudden. I think 2018 I was very much set on changing the way that my brain worked. I wanted to change my brain chemistry, and I really struggled with a lot of things, including the ambitions and aspirations that I had. I didn't want to have them, but they were there. So it was when I had my little Hindu-induced common moment, when I woke up from that suddenly some desires, they were gone, and I was finally free. So there is something to be said about that. I don't know what exactly happened, and if it was the shock of like the near-death experience I had, but things they changed for me for the better. But still, I think in that year 2019, as I was figuring out what I wanted to do, because I no longer had those plans that were in the past. So like, what do I want to do now? It was a lot of I think I started living more in the moment, that happened that year, and it was really good for me because I was how do I put this, like I was experimenting with a lot of different things, a lot of like new things, and it felt like my life has finally started to happen. It felt that from like 18 to 21 I was nothing was happening, and then 21 I 22 was 2019, was January 2019, so it was 21. Things finally started happening for me, and I started to live life, and I still these new versions of myself that I was creating in my head. A lot of them, some of them lasted like a minute, some lasted a day, some lasted a month, some lasted a year, but they were all, and I found like new obsessions as well, and those obsessions, they helped me figure out things. There was an obsession that I had that was like basically a year, and it's interesting because like right now that year has kind of like it's been like so many years since that one year that like I almost forget like how invested and how involved I was. But it was an interesting experience of being part of a fandom that I hadn't really had before, because I was always afraid of commitment. I was like, I don't want to commit myself to anything, but I was there, and it was something that it didn't have anything to do with my life. It didn't have anything to do with my growth and with my development as a person, but it was there, and it was kind of it was solace. It was comfort, and it was important. I think I needed that. 2019 was the year that I started exploring things. It was also the year, at the end of the year, I learned that I was bipolar, so I started treating for that specifically, and my life changed forever because I finally I was treating like the root of the issue, not just the symptoms and the things that were happening as a consequence of like me being kind of like stuck in my trauma, and like not really being able to move away from that. So it was an interesting journey, and I had like some really good moments where I was really living, and I figuring out like what is for me to live. I mean, I did have like a lot of manic episodes throughout like 2021, 2022, 2022, 2022. I had I had like lots of like moments that were they were very foundational. It was because basically we started treating the depression, so like I was left with a lot of like manic episodes, and I did some crazy things, but I really enjoyed it. I think I have a really fun memories from like that period of time. Like even looking back right now, it's an interesting thing, because I look at that and I'm like, okay, we should look at that. It was fun. I had fun. I enjoyed myself, and I started to realize like who I was as a person, because I was either kind of like frozen in place, kind of like stuck at home, not really interacting with the world, or I was in the other extreme where I was doing things. But I realized also that some of like the things I did when I was manic, like they were part of me, and as I said, I had a lot of fun, so I don't regret anything. I maybe should probably some things, because I was not the best professional during the time I was in the year 2020 and 2021. Like those were some fun years for me, and I was living. Basically, it felt like I was alive in a way that only like this year I started to my little indulgences. I started to indulge myself in some my little pleasures, and that's pretty much when I went back to feeling like I was alive. Because also like last year I was very depressed, and there was also many episodes, but I was very mentally too. 2023 and 2024. So like I had some moments that were good, and that I was able to and during which I was able to kind of like exist, and not just exist but also live. But you know, it was mostly just things were bad. And then this has also happened this year, but as I said, I had my little indulgences, and I've been enjoying life. I've been enjoying being alive. I mean, most of the time. Sometimes, you know, I get depressed, and then, but you know, it is what it is. But yeah, but also it's interesting because I had this moment, this years 18 to 21, where it felt like nothing was happening, and then it felt that 2023 and 2024 was also kind of the same, you know. And then this year, as I said, it feels like I'm back to, you know, something. And then right now, I am actually going back to something, because, you know, I'm finally stable after a longest time, and yeah. I think I'm gonna wrap this up. I know I started a lot of things that I didn't complete, that didn't, you know, like thoughts that I didn't conclude. But yeah, I don't remember them now. So it's going to be the conclusion of this video. So anyways, bye.